about his story and how he got here, so I don't even need to do that part of it. I'm going to turn it on over to Aji.
So he's presenting from that right now.
Can everybody hear me all right? Cool.
He's got another computer up there.
He's just using mine to do some additional work and stuff. But they have their own computers. They finally came with a tech person.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Aji Piper. Currently 16 years old. A youth leader in the environmental movement and social justice movement, trying to fight the destabilization of our natural ecosystems and environments and the improper and irresponsible use of our natural resources. A lot of times I get a question like, how did you get involved in climate change? Like, you've got school, you've got friends, you've got extracurricular activities. How did you really get into climate change? How did this become interesting to you? I mean, the first step for anything to really become interesting to you is first you gotta learn about it, right? So I learned about climate change, really that it's global warming. We rename things sometimes to take the power away from them. Global warming is a more accurate description of what's happening. Our average temperature on the planet rises. Bad things happen. Life as we know it will change. We know that global warming is a real issue. We know that it affects everybody, that it's caused by humans. We know that it's caused by our use of combustible fuels, fossil fuels, and that it's caused by our overuse of these fuels, not just by we burned a little coal here and a little gas here. It's like we're burning lots and lots of coal, lots and lots of gas in improper ways that are just really wasteful and not efficient. It does things like create droughts and wildfires. Got a map from 2015. This is the smoke from wildfires. I thought this was really interesting too, especially at this health conference. That smoke can probably definitely be very devastating in some areas for people with asthma, for newborns, things like that. Like your air quality definitely affects your health. And having lots and lots of wildfires creating lots of smoke, it's just not good for you. And then this is just more about the wildfires in 2016 in Washington, actually. They covered over 314 square miles, or 8,759,000 something square feet. And football field is 57,600 square feet. So it's approximately over 100,000 football fields of forest that burned in 2016 from wildfires. And I was just kind of like, whoa. That's like a lot of natural habitat that just went up in flames. They keep getting worse and worse each year. So it's an increasing thing. This very, very interesting thing that happened, another example of our misuse of resources. The land is considered a resource itself. This is actually from the Dust Bowl of America. Back in the 1930s and 40s, this is when the picture was taken. That's just kind of what happens as droughts happen. And of course, this was part of the natural climate of that area, is that it was rain and then drought for some time. But what we need to take into account and learn from this is that droughts are going to become more frequent everywhere else in the world. So we cannot do what we did in the Dust Bowl, otherwise we're going to lose our land as a natural resource. We're going to lose our farmable, our arable soil. And it's just going to dry up and blow away. severe storms, another effect of climate change, like Typhoon Haiyan. This now starts to move on a little bit. You see a little bit more than just the environmental when it comes to these storms. This hit the Philippines and hit them really, really hard. It destroyed a lot of people's homes and killed people, left them just destroyed and devastated. And people were starving, they needed food, and they didn't get the help they needed right away. And I'm sure they are still rebuilding. I haven't looked too much into it. And then this was from Hurricane Sandy. Now the difference between these two communities, this small neighborhood you see here, and this over here, this just wiped out neighborhood you see here, is that these people, people here in America, in a richer part of America, can get help faster. They can rebuild faster because we have systems in place. And it's because we are a wealthier country that we are able to afford that. Like, oh, we got hit by Hurricane Sandy, it was horrible. It was billions of dollars in damage. But we fixed it, right? Instead of we were hit by Hurricane Sandy, there was billions of dollars in damage, and now we have millions of people with no homes and no food because we have no money to fix this. So it's a big justice thing, right? We as a wealthier country, we can take some of these hits from global warming, but we need to be working as fast as we can to kind of level the playing field by stopping this, because even if we can take some hits, other people can't. And the spread of infectious diseases is a huge thing. We already know that lots of nasty diseases like warmer climates. Just think back to like the West Nile virus. It's a pretty nasty one. Or, more recent, the Zika virus that everybody was freaking out about. And that it doesn't reach up here in Seattle because Seattle is too far north. Or, no, I'm not in Seattle. So sorry. Sometimes it's a space case. So up in Seattle, it doesn't reach there because it's too far north and it's too cold most of the time. But as global warming continues forward, if we don't do anything about it, it gets warmer and warmer, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, where did Zika come from in Seattle? Like, what? When was this a thing? Oh my God! And then you're like panicking and stuff up in Seattle. Everybody in Seattle's like, there's Zika in Seattle! And it's a horrible thing, but these things happen because, the viruses were able to migrate farther north. And so, you learn about all this stuff and you're like, oh, wow. Now what does this mean to me, right? Like I learned about communities that were hit by hurricanes. I've never been hit by a hurricane. You learn about the spread of infectious diseases and droughts. We get lots of rain in Seattle. Like, sometimes it's not necessarily as tangible, but you got to think about it. You got to put yourself in a place of like, what does this mean? What can this mean in the future? And what do I do with this knowledge? This next part is really simple. The next knowledge that I have is that 350 parts per million is the goal I'm aiming for in carbon dioxide, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, right? So that is scientifically recognized as the maximum amount of carbon dioxide we can have in our atmosphere for it to be safe and it's not to be harming in any serious way. Our climate system is still not necessarily an amazing, like, you get to 350 parts per million and life is good and you're cruising. You still have work to do. Pre-industrial levels were about 280 and didn't usually get up to 350 parts per million ever. But that's where we stop positive feedback loops that do things like thaw, permafrost, and release methane and acidify the oceans even further, all these things. So I joined Plant for the Planet. It was actually a one-day workshop, an academy in Seattle. And it was kind of like one of these things, like where mom was going to be out of town for a couple days, and she's like, "You've got this choice, you've got this choice over here. Like, which of these things would you like to go to? But you can't be sitting at home all day." And so my brother and I were like, "Yeah, we'll check out Pemberton Clinic. It's cool." Right? We didn't really know what it was, so we go there and we get, we go through this whole training, and it's about developing yourself as a speaker, giving a presentation, the Pemberton Clinic's design. It's about learning more about climate change and its effects and its justice effects beyond just like the ice caps are melting and polar bears will die. It's like the ice caps are melting, polar bears will die, and so will many other species, and humans will be affected along with it, right? That kind of thing. Plant for the Planet was actually started in Germany. This is not Germany. This is Seattle. It was started in Germany by a 9-year-old named Felix Finkbein. And it spread through Europe and Asia and Africa. And the guy in the picture holding the tree, his name is Michael Foster. And he went through the Climate Realities Project training with Al Gore. And he's an awesome dude. And he was like, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the climate change movement, right? And I want to find something that can help people find hope. So he does Google search, this is the story he tells. He does Google search for kids save world climate change. And he finds Plant for the Planet. And he's like, wait a minute, there's no Plant for the Planet in North America. What is this? So he calls him up and he's all indignant. He's like, why don't you have a Plant for the Planet in North America? And he always says that people were very calm on the other line. They're like, well, it's because nobody ever asked. So he brought Plant for the Planet to North America. Seattle was the first place, and I was at the second academy it was ever given there. So, yeah. And then Plant for the Planet came up with this motto, which was stop talking, start planting. And the significance of this was that they had been planting some trees, but also trying to talk to governments to get them to agree to plant trees with them and all these things. And all they got was letters back being like, well, if you ever like write some corporation or like the automatic letter back, well, blah, 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 blah. I can't even create one off the top of my head. They're kind of ridiculous. But it's really nothing. Like they say nothing to you. They're like, well, we're not really going to cooperate with you or listen to what you're going to say. So they're like, let's just stop with the negotiations, right? Let's stop with all of this talk, talk about climate change. Let's like really get down to the work and start planting trees. Their goal is to plant 1 trillion trees around the world to mitigate the effects of climate change. We won't stop it. We still have to stop emitting carbon dioxide. We still have to stop burning as many fossil fuels, all our fossil fuels really. We just need to transition to greener energies and be more efficient in the ways we think about our resources and also the ways we use our resources for it. So that's exactly what I did. I stopped, we were talking, I started planting. So for a while, planting trees. I think this slide is out of place, but for future reference. Yeah, it'll be important. I promise. You see the apple tree. Then you see the 10-story building. Then you see the giant sequoia. And you see the coast redwood. The only thing missing in this picture is a scale. I mean, it's kind of a scale, but the coast redwood, its maximum height is about 356 feet tall. They're huge trees. And really big trees, let's say the tree is 69 feet in diameter. If you want to do the math to figure out it's way too far, 69 feet in circumference. You don't do the math to figure out the diameter. But it grows 1 inch all the way around, 69 feet at the base. lot of carbon dioxide that it has to pull in to create that matter to grow that tree 1 inch all the way around. So some studies have been done, and the scientists that did these studies found that redwood groves, forests of redwoods, are more efficient at sequestering carbon dioxide than the rainforests of the world put together, which is mind-blowing because it's been said so many times. The rainforests are the most efficient carbon sequestration system of trees that we have out there. I disagree. They're still really, really important, but we also have to look at these redwood trees as also extremely important. Planting more trees. And then this happened, July of 2013, in Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. I think July 6th was the date. An oil train derailed and vaporized their downtown, killed some people. I don't remember how many people it killed.
42 or 47.
40-something people. And it was just this really, like, for a lot of people, it was an eye-opening thing. Like, wait, a train derailed and it didn't just spill the oil it was carrying, it blew up. Yes, it's carrying very volatile oil that evaporates into the air quickly and ionizes quickly, and it creates an explosion. And then, shortly after this, the trains carrying Bakken crude tar sand oil, which is volatile, explosive. They're like, a good place to send these, the refineries up north of Seattle. So they're going to go through Seattle, through the downtown of Seattle, as many as 21 trains a week. Trains, if they derail, will explode and blow up and vaporize part of our downtown Seattle. And I'm sure there's plenty of equations out there for physics, the physics of an explosion inside of a tight space and the pressure it puts on it. So if a really, really long train with a lot of oil on it explodes in a small tunnel under downtown Seattle, it's got a lot more force than just derailing and exploding up. So it's extremely dangerous. But beyond that, if it doesn't explode, well, you've got an oil spill to deal with in the city. Or if it doesn't derail in the city and say derails along the coast of the Sailor Sea, which it goes along for a really long time, which is also known as the Puget Sound, then it spills all the oil into the Puget Sound, which is one of the most diverse marine ecosystems in the world. And that's a lot of things that it's destroying immediately. So these are completely unacceptable to have going through Seattle at all, because they're just a pose a threat no matter what they do. They make it to their destination while you refine that crude tar sand oil, and then you burn it right up, and you create carbon dioxide emissions and hurt the global biosphere, globally raise the average temperature. It spills along the Sailor Sea and destroys the eco-marine life. It blows up under downtown Seattle and kills many, many people. Any scenario that you have here, it's just bad. And, I'm looking like, wait a minute, this right here. The salmon, the orcas, the beautiful coastlines, the Pacific octopus that we have there, the great blue herons will end up like this. They'll end up, this water is not water in this picture, it's actually a picture of oil on top of the water. This is a projected kind of thing if an oil spill happens. It's extremely hard to clean this up out of the water. We've seen this with the BP oil spill. They couldn't get it out of the water. So what is it going to do to the marine ecosystems up there? So, this is the kind of challenges that I was facing up there in Seattle. And then I was like, okay, the time for just planting trees is over. It's time to take my words. And actually, my song that I'll share with you to city council. And so I testified in city council, used my song for testimony, and I also played outside in the rally. This was actually the first song that I wrote on the ukulele. This song was finished a month after I joined the plant and got the ukulele. And I taught myself everything I know on the ukulele right now. Dying is pretty, so think about your generations, think about the lives they live, think about your children's 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 children, think about the future generations, think about the lives they live, think about our children's children's children, what to them do you give? 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 Destroyed ecosystem. What to them do you give? The keystone pipeline. What to them do you give? Exploding train. So that was, the first song I wrote. It was a little simple. I actually wrote it with my little brother. It's right there. And, so now I started moving towards more public speaking and things like that. And this is a quote that I really like. We don't, hope you can read this, we don't inherit the earth from our parents, we borrow it from our children. It really just is to emphasize that, you can't just be like, this is my earth, I get to do what I want with it. You have to act like, this is something you're borrowing, and a space that you're borrowing. And when you're in somebody else's space, I know that it's common rule and courtesy to leave it cleaner than you found it, right? So why is the earth being messed up more and more each time a generation goes by? We have to stop this, we have to reverse it. And, now I was like, okay, I'm ready to start speaking. I've got my connections, I'm ready to do more than tree planting. And yeah, I was moving towards more, and it says more independence, but it's really more like broader scopes of thinking about climate change and what environmental justice really was, right? Like, what is this climate change movement I'm really fighting? Like, what is my purpose that I'm really trying to get towards? This is a really good friend of mine, and also the founder of Earth Guardians Rise, Donatio Martinez. And he's a Native American, also 16. And he said, the biggest challenge we face is shifting human consciousness, not saving the planet. The planet doesn't need saving, we do. And that definitely stuck with me and rung with me, because I was like, truthful to say that we need to save ourselves as it's a human race.
Sorry, I'm not sure what you said.
Thought that was me for a second. What we're doing is fundamentally self-destructive, and it's shooting ourselves in the foot, to be precise. Not necessarily precise, but you know what I mean. So Earth Guardians, like I said, Earth Guardians Rise, founded by Shutescott, and this was the next step in my journey. So after I had, my ukulele, wrote a song for it, started on some other songs, started speaking more, going to more rallies, direct actions, public protests, things like this. I guess I caught the attention of Earth Guardians because they were looking for youth that were involved in the movement, representing across the United States. And we came together, as Earth Guardians, just this kind of group trying to, group of youth leaders trying to create more leadership in this environmental movement from youth, right? Like, it's not like, I don't personally, I don't want to be like the one person who like starts everything and leads everything. Like, that sucks, in my opinion. It's a lot of work, and you gotta organize. Once you get to like 100 people, and you're the sole leader, like trying to create things for people to do and motivation, it stops working. So the idea of Rise is to create more leadership in youth so that they lead themselves, and so that they don't have to do that, like, to create that like independence and autonomy, and also awareness of our natural systems of our world, of what we need to be doing, how we need to start living. So I attended this training in the Catskill Mountains. It was a 3-day training. Throughout this training, we talked a little less about environmentalism necessarily, right? We weren't like 350 parts per million the whole time. We weren't talking about the environmental science or we need to be planting trees. We were talking more about what we needed to do and hold as values as an organization, and what we needed to fight as an organization, because recognizing that global warming is a symptom of a destructive society, a society that is not connected with itself, separated in essence from the land that we live on and the food that we eat, and the people that we meet on the street, kind of thing, right? Like, you can go sit on a public bus in Seattle and not make eye contact with anybody, and it's dead silent because most people are either on their phones and they all look unhappy. Like, we should just start conversations with each other. Like, it's like we're all isolated, living in our own bubbles, kind of thing. So this is what we talked about there over this 3-day training. We've had multiple now. It's been years since we had this first training. It was the original Rise crew, whichever side you want to look at. And this organization has developed from just a fledgling, like, talking about the values we want to hold and what we're really like battling against as a organization trying to create leadership centered around the environmental movement, but also recognizing that you can't just be like climate change. You can't just be like Black Lives Matter, because while those are all important, they're all symptoms of a society that's self-destructive and of a culture that has not been connected with itself. And then I come back from this amazing 3-day training in the Catskill Mountains. It was totally awesome. Got away from the city for a while, up in the mountains, snow everywhere, chilling with awesome people. Just working on this idea of Rise that was just everything that I really wanted to do. It was just awesome. And I get back home and Shell's coming. What? Yeah, Shell wants to drill a Chukchi Sea in the Arctic, and they want to use Seattle as their home base. This was the news I got when I got back home. I was like, what? I just got back home. If any of you have ever stuff. This is how I felt. I'm like, I haven't put my bags down yet, and Shell is coming in to do some weird wacky stuff and touchy seed, drill some oil. What is this? Like, please. And so immediately, like, jumped right into this. Like, we gotta oppose this. Like, getting out there with Native American people from like the Lakota tribe and the Duwamish tribe, out there like sharing their music with us, and us being outside of the federal building, inside the federal building, meeting with people, talking to port commissioners at public hearings and stuff. This is what the people were doing. We're like, no, this cannot happen. And I have another song to share with you. And this song, it's, you can tell I'm a bit older. I feel like you can tell I'm a bit older. Right? Yeah. What gave it away? But this song is, just, the first one was an ask, and this one is a warning. But it's kind of like, it has an ask in it, but, if you listen to the first song, it's like, hey, please don't do this because this stuff happens. This one's like, this stuff is gonna happen. So. Across the land to spill all of their blacks out sand. Truly it's a vital plan. There's a danger up ahead. There's a danger up ahead. There's a danger, it's not in our heads. The danger up ahead. There's a danger up ahead. Don't use our ports as docking grounds. We don't want that in the sound. Keep that oil in the ground. There's a danger up ahead. It's drilling Arctic oil means disaster for our human beings. So do what's right and revolt the least. There's a danger up ahead. There's a danger up ahead. So that song came a little less like, I was like, obviously they didn't listen to my first song. So now I just gotta tell them, like, straight up, like, I said, people dying is pretty in my first song. Do I have to say it explicitly? We're all gonna die. May not be true, but, for the purposes of the song, like, it definitely, sometimes I feel like you need that, a little bit of hyperbole in some senses. To kind of illustrate that things are great and things are serious and that we can't just blow this off. And, despite all of our protests and testimonies, Shell still comes and docks in our port. Funny thing, Shell comes and docks illegally in our port. And guess how much they got fined a day? You're going to be amazed by this. It's so good. $500 a day for a multi-billion-dollar company parked illegally in the port of Seattle. They had no permit. The mayor said, the governor said, no, you can't do this. You cannot park here. What do? Well, we're just going to park right up here in the port. So one of our brave activists from Seattle, actually Bellingham, chains herself to the anchor of this drilling rig, the one I showed you a few slides back. And she was fined. She was fined $20,000
Oh my.
for just under 3 days. They stayed there way more than 3 days, but they only got fined $500 a day. So when you do the math, a single person got fined a ton of money for a short amount of time. And a multi-billion-dollar company got fined a smaller amount of money for a longer period of time, but relatively nothing. Nothing. Shell honestly could have done whatever they wanted with that kind of fine. There's nothing restricting them at that point. They're like, a $500 fine. It's like you making $100, right? And you do something and you get fined a penny. Like a penny. Take my penny. Whatever. So we built the mosquito fleet. This was our response. We're like, okay, if the port commissioners aren't going to make sure to enforce, and if the city is only going to fine $500 a day, which is ridiculous, we're going to get out on the water, and we're going to do something direct. So just like blocking a train in theory, we block an oil rig, except it's on the water. So we get like 2,000 people on the water on the day, or 2,000 or 3,000 people out on the water on the day that Shell was supposed to leave, that drilling rig was supposed to leave our port. You know they did? They canceled. They're like, actually we're not going to, because we're not trying to be speculative. So they canceled, and then they tried to sneak out later and actually got blocked by people who had that emergency plan. They're like, we know that they're probably going to cancel on the day of the mass action, and we know that they're going to try to sneak out later at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to be ready the moment they start moving, and we're going to get out there in the kayaks. And they actually did. They got out there in the kayaks, and they got on that rig and they actually blocked it, and they got arrested. But and this was the mosquito fleet. Like that is literally the mosquito fleet. We're like that whole. Have you ever heard the saying? One mosquito cannot make a rhino change its directions, but 1,000 mosquitoes can make a rhino change its direction. This was the whole kind of idea behind the mosquito fleet. It's like one person is really, really easy to take off the water. You can't have just a few people. You need tons and tons of people out on the water. It's actually really, really cool. We had like on the day of the mass action, there was tons of art performances. There was like a solo barge out there with lots of music on it. We had lots of these kayaktivist trainings. And there's some more pictures of when they were like, it was going to be leaving, but then it wasn't because they're like, well, we don't. Funny thing about this, they get out of our port, they're going up, and somewhere off of some island, they run their drilling rig aground on a sandbar and have to wait for the tide to come up and get it off. Obviously, we cannot pilot this thing. And they want to go drill in the Chukchi Sea again. Like in the harshest environment, other than maybe a desert, on the planet, the Arctic Ocean, where we know those icebergs sink pretty much any ship that crosses them. We've got a problem. Sorry about that picture there. A little bit of a formatting happening. It's me standing with a microphone like this, and I got some shades. And right in front of me, the red at the bottom, it's a kayak that we gave the port commissioners. And this was actually before we got out on the water. We gave this kayak to them and filled with 10,000 handwritten letters, individually handwritten letters, that invited them to join us out on the water for that action, and asked them to revoke any lease that Shell had for any kind of docking or unloading of their dangerous cargo if they came back from the Chukchi Sea with oil in our ports, to really just like But, you know, because we were like, we want climate justice now. And that's what banner says. It's pretty self-explanatory. And so that's kind of how things went for the next bit while. I don't, sometimes you lose track of time. You're like, you know, this one time I did this, people are like, Aji, that was 2 years ago. You're like, oh, I'm like, you know, wow, that felt like it wasn't that long ago. So, pardon me if some of these events seem like there's spaces because I don't always get all the pictures too. But, you know, later Obama comes to Seattle. He's like this climate champion dude, but he also signed a permit for Shell to drill the Chuck-E-C. I was pissed at him, to say the least. And you know, moving through this, I was like, okay, focus on divesting and investing, do things like support the divest, get Bill and Melinda Gates to divest, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to divest from some of their fossil fuel assets, which they actually did. They actually got them to. Pretty cool. And then the next part, which is the most recent part, it's the biggest to me, which is why I'm biggest. Our Children's Trust. And the important part about Our Children's Trust, if you don't know what it is, it's a nonprofit organization that helps youth in the U.S. and I think actually all around the world bring litigation against their governments, so take their governments to court based on a article common law called the Public Trust Doctrine. And it's, I had to do some research. It's not, it wasn't like written into the Constitution by our founding fathers, but it's been adopted into the common law of every constitution in the world. State constitutions, federal constitution, all of it. And it's been affirmed by both the state county judge in Washington and the federal judge in federal court in Oregon. And so I'm part of a Washington state case, 8 plaintiffs, once again formatting problems. And so that's only a few of us, but right now we're in the process of taking the Washington state government to court for not protecting our natural resources. I forgot to say that. The Public Trust Doctrine states that governments are responsible for protecting the natural resources of the land and the water, and as affirmed by our judge in Washington and in the federal court, the air as well also counts as one of those 3 resources that are extremely important. And so, along with the land, that means if you cut off the top of a mountain, you are And the science calls for a certain percentage reduction every year. And last year, it was an 8% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions every year, starting that year. And it stays at 8% every year if you start in that year. So this year, it's 9%. Next year, it'll be 10%. And it'll just keep going up. And every time it goes up, people are going to say, what? 10%? That's ridiculous. 9%? That's crazy. 11%? That's impossible. So that's the point. We need to be starting now before it gets to the point where you think it's impossible. So we're caught up in a bureaucratic battle, and it feels like we're going nowhere for a bit. So we're like, what we're trying to do is get corporations to have their emissions regulated in the state of Washington. So why don't we just write the corporations, and hopefully we'll get some positive results, and they'll understand. So we mail something like 100-something letters to different corporations. It's like 19 or 20 different corporations total is how many we ended up reaching. And we put my address as the return address on all of them. And lo and behold, in the mail, what I got was a bunch of, the lumber industry is extremely clean because we plant trees after we clear cut the whole mountains out and cause landslides. So we're doing everything that we need to do for climate change. Like, we are totally wholeheartedly with you. That was like lies. So it's really frustrating. And so, a lot of times it just feels like these lawsuits are really like, when they're not caught up in a bureaucratic battle, really, really good, and kind of like the only thing that's moving forward at a quick pace. This is a picture from the steps outside of the federal courthouse. And I'm in that picture now. And there's 21 plaintiffs on that federal case. And we started the case like 3 years ago against the Obama administration. We are continuing the case into trial this fall, hopefully, against the Trump administration. And it's been really, really interesting. But so it's one of those things that when it comes down to environmental justice, it's one of the only things that really feels like it can go forward with a lot of power without being kind of snubbed out by somebody who says climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese government. And no policy is coming from the head of our country that's going to be, or maybe you don't know, I don't know, but it does not seem hopeful that any policies will be coming from our president that will be beneficial to any kind of environmental movement or the environment. We actually had many overflow courtrooms, so it's a pretty big case. It's pretty cool. You should, I'm pretty sure you can. Yeah. So this is, that's what's going on. That's my journey through climate change, and that's how I kind of stepped into youth power. It's pretty amazing. The last slide, second last slide, how the life as we know it will change either way. And the question is, which way will we choose? So are we gonna blindly keep doing what we're doing and just let the world do whatever it does, and most likely end up in a really bad position, or are we gonna take a good, long, hard look, long in a short period of time, hard look at our situation and start to backtrack and change things real quick. But yeah, I'm Aji Piper. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. Any questions?
Wait. Okay.
Tell us a little more about the litigation how costs are being covered, time and effort. that
So,
sort
our Children's Trust is a nonprofit that they fund the whole thing through donations. So, you know, they ask for donations at some events and on their social media. So that's how, and you know, sometimes they get donations from pretty wealthy people. So that's how it's being funded at the moment. And the lawyers, their time is being paid from our Children's Trust, as well as travel expenses and stuff like that. So
There's also some lawyers that have given their time pro bono.
yeah,
Like,
there's also some pro bono work that's done.
Anyone else? When you spoke about your kayak, I don't remember the number, it was something like 10,000 handwritten letters, and I'm wondering if you could share how you engaged so many people in your community.
So the whole kind of activist movement, like I cannot take credit for engaging 10,000 handwritten letters. I just happened to be in the picture because I was speaking, and I was also part of writing some of the letters in there. But it was actually a coalition of all the environmental organizations that are in Seattle. So we had Rising Tide, 350, the Backbone Campaign,
Greenpeace.
Yeah, Greenpeace, and Plant for the Planet, and a couple other organizations, Got Green, and so we had a bunch of organizations that across the entirety of Seattle, like not just like me and my little spot in West Seattle, and like, or like, you know, Plant for the Planet got 10,000 people. It was like we had a huge network that covered all of Seattle. So that's how we engaged that many people, and a lot of being out there and like petitioning, right? You petition and then you tell people about this, and then they know about it, and then you're like, here's another way you could support it, and then you know, people just ended up getting linked in. So it was it worked out to me.
Buenos dias. Mine is sort of related to her question in terms of community engagement, but I'm wondering specifically about youth. How has part of your work, because I didn't quite understand that. I saw you working in a lot of coalitions as an individual and going and doing activist work, but I'm wondering, have you organized youth and to do work in other than just educating them, but to come together to work and to work towards making these changes in your own community?
Yeah, so I've been part of I haven't like been like the lead organizer in an organization yet. That's something I'm actually working on right now. But I've been part of organizing youth to do things like that. Mostly it's been planting trees and cleaning up parks, forest restoration in Seattle. Actually, we had this thing in Seattle where we still are trying to get warning labels on gas point nozzles. It's just like a warning label on a cigarette, but right on the handle of the nozzle. And so, you know, that's just that kind of change that, you know, I've been part of leading youth in that, but it's not been like who leads those youth. Aji leads those youth.
You were with the letter writing campaign.
First, I just want to say that was a phenomenal presentation, and the work that you are doing is amazing. Really fantastic. As somebody who works with youth, you really inspire me that it is true that when I believe that people can do this. So thank you. I just wanted to bring it back. You brought up the point of like, how does it affect me? And I'm curious what you think, because I think with environmental issues, a lot of times it's abstract for people, or it is something that is so far down the road or whatever. And I'm wondering how you see the linkages between health and environment as being a way to maybe connect it to people more on a personal level.
environment, mostly actually. I think of food. You have this really big problem where you don't, or the majority in averages, you just don't know where your food comes from, right? Something lands on your plate and you don't necessarily know if it's meat, where the animal was raised, how it was treated, and what, how was it killed? You just don't know this stuff, and then a lot of times people just don't care about this stuff, right? It's just they're so disconnected, and we know that it's extremely important what you put into your body. It's extremely important.
Aji's in the middle of his
Wake up in the
presentation.
morning, say if I had woken up this morning and not eaten anything, I'd probably be falling over on my feet right now of exhaustion and just not be able to think. It'd be a health problem if you don't eat, and it's also a health problem if you eat the wrong things. So we have this really big imbalance, and a lot of it, the imbalance, the disconnection between our food and us, and our food and our health, is a root cause of this global warming. Right? Agriculture is a huge, industrial agriculture is a huge emitter of methane and carbon dioxide when it takes to process and ship around all these different, your corn syrups and your field corn number 2, and genetically modify all these corns. And so it just becomes not only like a carbon dioxide environmental problem and the health from that, the health impacts from that, but it also becomes health impacts from your eating food that has been genetically altered by people in a non-natural way that is probably not helping you on the inside at all. And in a lot of cases, it really hurts people. It hurts animals that eat that. When they feed that field corn number 2, the cows, it burns holes in their stomachs. Is that not it's a clue? It just tells us that's what I think of when I think of environmental things and health impacts, and what it means to me is my food, and then also my air quality most of the time when it comes to like wildfires and smokes. Like 2 years ago, I went on a backpacking trip in the North Cascades in Washington, and for half of the backpacking trip, we were hiking through burned out forest, and we were hiking in the path of a fire that was burning 600,000 acres at once. So it was just spreading. And they were trying to control it, and it was not successful. It was a massive wildfire, and it got relatively smaller than what happened last year. So that's why I say it's gotten worse and worse. It's like, you burn all your forests, you have no oxygen to breathe, you have smoke in the air, it hurts your lungs. So those are the health impacts. Does that answer your question?
One more question?
Thank you, that was a great presentation. Amazing songs on ukulele. So my question is, over the last couple of years, we've seen more efforts in the U.S. in pushing back against things like the Dakota Access Pipeline. What can we learn about efforts going outside the U.S.? And the reason why I ask that is because I know that the indigenous peoples like in Central and South America have really been on the forefront pushing back, and to the degree where we're having environmental activists assassinated. So what can we learn from those efforts here in the U.S., especially being a country that we should be setting the model for the rest of the world with this stuff?
That's a really good question. First off, I'm not necessarily sure if I'll be able to completely answer the question. I'll try to the best of my ability. To be honest, haven't done a large amount of research to the indigenous people of South America. Been, pretty
unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. Thank you so much.